Good morning, good evening to everybody. Stefano, Mazarin Geopolitics from Italy. Today it's like the first speech and the first table that we start from the last month. As I said to you in advance, I was about 20 days in Japan. I will talk a little bit later about it. Today it's an open table. We have it's not 42 already connected. If everybody wanted to chat with us, in the chat there is the link to connect to StreamYard. It's very easy. You can connect anytime. I think today we will make like 1 hour and a half of free speech. We will make chat. If you have any type of question, you can connect. Charles, I see that you're connected, so connect to StreamYard, not in the chat.
Hello.
We want to view. And about the news, I will tell you a little bit of the next streams that we will have in the next 2 weeks. Tomorrow we will have at 11 Italian time GMT +1 the Major General Arthur George Denaro, that is a former general of the British Army. It's retired from 2003, but it will be very interesting to talk with him about anything. So for tomorrow we will have also David De Tomasi in the next two weeks that will make a panel about oil and gas industries. We will have Paul J. Saunders, that is an expert about energy also. It's also an honor to have an Italian-Turkey speaker that will talk about Turkey, and it's pretty interesting because yesterday we had a bombing in Istanbul, and I will be in Istanbul on the 1st of December, so it will be interesting talking with him. It's called Murat Çınar. And the last two planned speakers are from UK, Carol Nakle. She's an energy specialist. She's from Lebanon, but she's many years living in UK. She's an authority about energy. So if you see, we will have three major speakers and speech about energy, because in the next year I think it will be the most interesting issue to talk about. The last speech it will be Gianluca Sgueo, that is a friend from Rome, that is a former worker of the last government in Italy. And it will be a speech about the digitalization of the bureaucracy and the governments. So, about the news, I think in the last month a lot of things changed. The other thing that I forgot, we will try to make a roundtable with Web Union, military summary, war in Ukraine, history legends. I will forget someone. Damn history. All our group of analysts on November 23. I will update everything in the channel, so you will have any information. So now the preview is finished. I will not talk anymore about the speech. What about? I wanted to tell you something about Japan. It was an incredible experience. I met also our speakers, that is Satoru Nagaro. It was very interesting for me to visit also Okinawa. For who don't know, it was like a very important island that was under the US occupation until 1972. And now there is still a big presence of US Army, especially Air Force. And it's an island with a big influence of the United States. If you look to the map, where is it? It's located at the same, let's say, parallel of Taiwan. It's not so far away from China, and so it's simply incredibly important for the control of the Pacific. The Japan was very interesting because I saw a civilization completely different from ours. They're very kind. The society is completely ordered. There is very, 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 let's say, respect of the others. Very silent people. In the metro, there is no sound. It was incredible. So, about the geopolitical situation and Venezuela, if you want, we can start to talk about it and chat. For all the others, enter whenever you want. A lot of news in the geopolitical situation in the world. We will talk later about the G20 and about the situation on the field. We saw the withdrawal of the Russian forces in Kherson, and now they are on the right part of the Dnieper river, Dnipro in Italian, and it will be very interesting to understand what will be the scenario of the Russian strategy during the winter. Why? Because actually the Ukrainians were very, very successful in infantry and with a strategy of, let's say, small commandos, and but this infantry is using like let's say light vehicle that are not usable during the frozen time of winter, especially like in the eastern part of Ukraine. Islam, if you want to talk a little bit,
offer a little bit of cope for Russian audience, let's say.
Yes.
In regards to the withdrawals from Kherson and what was the, I forgot, God damn it, the territory in the north that they withdrew previously, or was it Kherson?
Kharkiv.
Kharkiv. Thank you. For Kherson, I think Russian army, if I remember correctly, following the sitraps and so on, the mappers who followed the war, Russians went in the Mykolaiv directions from, as we spoke about it before the stream a little bit. Russians went to the Mykolaiv direction through Kherson, I think once before, at the very beginning of the war. Then they withdrew the bridgehead, and then again established an assault on in Kherson direction in earnest later in the war, and now they withdrew it. I think the reason why they withdrew, as it was stated, is that the Novokakovka Dam was a threat of being breached, and of large-scale flooding of Kherson and territories next to Dnieper River. I think the reason why it was done right now is because the initial push in that direction to begin with, done by previous commanders, was a Russian mistake that they had to remedy at some point. So it wasn't like necessarily a defeat in the conventional military sense, that or a success on Ukrainian part. Although, of course, it was a defeat in many ways for Russia politically. But from the very beginning, it was a push that had political reasons to be executed, and now they are remedying the mistake that was made for political reasons, and withdrawing from the direction that was from the very beginning unfavorable for Russia. Here's from Kharkiv direction. On the other point is, it wasn't really so much as a Ukrainians recapturing the territory as much as, again, in a very similar fashion, Russians withdrew their forces from the territory prior to the recapture to, I don't know why, perhaps the reason for both retreats is to consolidate their efforts and resources on a more pressing direction in Donetsk and Donbass direction, and instead of pursuing these goals, multiple goals at the same time, they might want to consolidate their forces and push in one direction, break through in one direction like Bakhmut, and continue from that direction instead of overstretching themselves. Well, at least that's my good cope sort of view of this at this point. I might be completely wrong, obviously. That's what I think.
No, but if I can share like to you also, this is like the actual documentation about the Institute of Study of War, that I think that has the bigger coverage of the information about the actual situation. And for sure it's let's say pro-Western sources, but if we can check what they're saying, I think it's very interesting in the third chapter, that Ukraine's success resulted in large part from the Ukrainian armed forces innovating the use of US-provided HIMARS to disrupt Russian supply lines. The HIMARS ammunition the US has given Ukraine are not suitable for destroying bridges where warheads are too small and not optimized for such strikes. So the Ukrainian armed forces developed a tactic to work around that limitation by conducting multiple precision strikes across the Kiev-Antonovsky bridge and the road that ran atop the Kakhovka Dam that you said before. In such a way to break the roadways and is in a line across them, rendering unusable without actually destroying the bridge's infrastructure. So the main thing is that they are not telling to us, but the missile provided to Ukraine to use to the HIMARS, it's like a low range. So it's not mid or long range. This is because the US probably are afraid that the Ukrainians can use the HIMARS too far away, let's say to Crimea or let's say after the Donbass zones. If we check and see a little bit of a map, we can see that the blue part was the former occupied zones in the north and in the south that was, let's say, liberated from the Ukrainian forces. If we can concentrate it on the south, we can see that actually all the blue part was under the control of the Russians, I think maximum 1 week ago. And so the withdrawal was complete. If you check what could be a scenario that could be interesting to analyze, in the southern part of the Kherson Oblast, there is a small piece of land, and there are rumors that there is actually commandos that are trying to make a bridgehead in a beach that I will show you later on the left part of the map. let's say, I will tell you the name.
Little thing.
Yes, it's in that side, like the name. Yes, the name of the place. Let me check immediately, so I will let you know. It's not so far away from the other part of the border. It's difficult to, let's say, to protect. It's okay. Rybalk, or it's called Stanislavski Mayak. This part.
It looks
like
very dangerous to try and advance from there, honestly.
No. It's not an advance. It's only a bridgehead. So let me see, because there is someone that is connected. Oh, Charles, finally you connected yourself.
Hello.
So hi, Charles. And so how are you?
Fine. Just yeah.
Okay, perfect. So let's see, like the eastern part, we can see that there is no results both parts, so there is not an advance. I was looking a video in the Russian Monitor, but it's like a YouTube channel that it's taking video from the Russian television with English subtitles. It's very suggested to you. It's called Russian Monitor, Russian Media Monitor. And they said in a sarcastic way, it was a Russian
lot
soldier.
of text on the screen.
Huh?
A lot of text on the screen. If I remember correctly, those videos, I think I seen somewhere. Russian.
Well, this military guy from the Eastern Front was saying that the Russians were improving the advance about 3 centimeters a day. Like, it was a sarcastic way from the Russian point of view that there is no advance. So you can see that the main places where it's still let's say attacks both parts. It's Vuhledar, Advika, Marinka, Bakhmut. In the northern part, you can see that there is like a Ukrainian approach next to Lysychansk, and also to another part that it's very important, like for the route that it's Kremina. And what we can say that in my point of view, everything will change a little bit after this G20, because I think that we can see some changement on the battlefield that will be generated by the actual speech of today between Biden and Xi Jinping. China, it's now in a very economical big crisis. I don't know if you check any video about it, but there was a big lockdown inside the Foxconn factory. But I think it's like a city. It's about 100,000 people, and they block the people inside the factory because they wanted to maintain the production of the iPhones, for example. And the people were not able to go home for a long time, and they had to put grids like outside of the windows. No, but to prevent that the worker cannot suicide themselves. So if they jump from the window, they are not able to suicide. So it's incredibly mess in China now. I had a friend that I have a friend that now she's in Shenzhen, and they're still making tampons and COVID check every day, multiple time a day. If you move to one city to another one, your certification is not valid. So you have a QR code that is different every city. There is a control in every community. So the Chinese are getting crazy. The economy is not going well. So I think that this system that is trying to make 0 cases of COVID. It's degrading the Chinese economy. So why it's connected this to Ukraine? And then if you want to say something, Charles, be free, or Islam. It's connected because if you check what is the big news of the last week, it's that Biden, let's say that didn't lose the election, the midterm. It was first time of a Democrat elected president that have so good results. Let's say good, it means not bad. So they maintained the Senate. They lost a little bit of House of Representative, but it was a huge loss for the Trump and Trump supporters. So what does it mean? In short term, it means a full support of the US to Ukraine. Because if Biden lost something more, I think probably they needed more agreement with the Republicans. But
I don't know if it would have changed anything, honestly. Whether it was Republicans or Democrats.
It's not about the Republicans in the Republican Party. It's about the Trump supporters in the Republican Party. Now, for example, there is a rumor that the next candidate could be the actual governor of Florida, DeSantis. That is like an Italian American, and but is very young because it's 44, I think. So maybe too young for run as a president, but it will be a pain in the ass for Trump because he's let's say very popular in the Russian conservative, but is not so, let's say, Trumpist as Trump.
It's so interesting how it became normal for president candidates to be 60 or 70 years old, and someone who's only 40 years old is too young now to run for president.
Okay, if you think about, let's say that if you think about when Putin became president the first time was around 50. So it was, let's say, pretty young to be a president of a big country. If you check about Xi Jinping, now is about 70, and so it was over 60 when it was like president in the first mandate. Actually, for example, the Prime Minister of Italy, she's 40. She's from 1977, so she's 45. But there is some trend now in Europe with a young president like Macron is also young for the average of other president. But Biden, if you look at Biden, it's 81, 80. Let me check that one to. Joe Biden is 79. So it's okay. Okay, Putin is 70.
Yeah.
Putin is 70 and Biden is 79. But I think that what I wanted to tell you it's that I'm sure that Chinese and Americans are making such a kind of an agreement because it will be very difficult for the two biggest economies to stay in a recession that it's more than 2 years indulge. What I want to make a provocation. The provocation is the actual technical recession started in 2020 with COVID, but it was covered by public money. So now it will be a technical recession for all the West, plus China, plus Russia. It's already in technical economic recession, but An interesting thing is that we don't have actual data from Nabulina by many months, because probably the real reason is that the biggest part of the sanction, that it's like the ban of the Russian oil, will start in December. And so the real effect of the Russian economy, of the ban of the export of the oil, will be much bigger after January. So if there is, let's say, such a kind of a treaty, ceasefire, a deal, or whatever, I think that the sanction can be reduced. So it's like a poker hand. In this moment, I don't think that like Russians have a good hand in on the table. For a long term game. For a short term you can, but a long term it's difficult to manage an economy where like 40% of
I'm
your
afraid
GDP.
it's not a game anymore at all. Like, I
No, but
understand what you're
it was
saying.
metaphorical game.
Yeah, I know, but it's not a game anymore in the metaphorical sense as well. How should I put it?
What do you think about it?
It's not the kind of conflict that you can just stop at this point. This is my understanding of it. Honestly, it's. I think with mobilization past that point, it was sort of a point of no return, really. We haven't seen the results of that mobilization on the battlefield yet. But sure, of course, it's going to take some time. It's taking some time to deploy those troops. But if we're talking about hand, we haven't seen that hand play out yet. That's one thing. The other thing is Russia. You sort of brushed it last time I mentioned it, but those three regions are Russian territory now by Russian law. Russia simply has no option to not pursue their full quote unquote liberation.
But
It's too
I
late
agree,
for that.
but it's an internal recognition that it's not recognized by any country in the world. So it
Russian
was
law matters for Russia, for Russian decision making. It almost doesn't matter whether it's recognized or not. It matters for Russia, for Russian motives. So it's like I understand that it may not be recognized by the rest of the world, but it's recognized by Russia.
No, I agree. But the main thing is, I repeat to you, Russian economy, it's historically made to export commodities, not to produce anything. So if there is, let's say, a huge ban of oil and gas that will be completely operative in December, and like the commercial surplus that I can show you, like the graph of the value of the gas. The value of gas, it's in completely fall. So now the gas price, only to give you the actual, let's say.
Stefano, the approach to the conflict is different. Russia is fighting for its territorial integrity. If they have to mobilize all 25 million reserves and completely redo the whole economy for the war footing, they will do it. It's not that kind of situation where you can just stop. It's too late.
I don't know, because in the history of the Russian Federation, there is a lot of regime changes. So
Unless that happens, obviously.
It's not the first time. It will not be the last. There is an interesting movie to see, but it's like a drama comic. It's like the death of Stalin, and it's
It was a fun movie.
yeah. But if you remember what happened, it's like when Khrushchev came after Stalin, like Brezhnev was already ready to take the Khrushchev place after him. So what it's and this is something that it's very Russian. So the main thing is we don't still know. We were chatting about it, but we don't know what will be the next president. But for sure, in the all technical analysis that you say, you can mobilize 20 millions of soldiers, but there is like no assets to give to them. On battlefield, it's proven by the battles that it was ineffective. Like if you don't give them the, let's say, right equipment, the right training, or it's something, let's say, without any type of explanation, how the second biggest army on paper in the world is not winning with 28. Also, if they got all the weapons from the West, but it's not a huge amount of weapons, and for sure, it's not except the HIMARS. All the support from the West was not the last technologies. For example, Germans didn't give the Panther tanks. The Swiss didn't allow the Germans to give the Swiss technology weapons to Ukraine. Italy gave, let's say, only old stuffs. They don't got. They didn't have the new weapons, and this is something that made me very sad because. In my stupid analysis, I think that the Western countries gave the assets to Ukraine to use on battlefield, also to the old assets to increase the military spending and let's say make our assets new. I don't know if you get what I wanted
I
to
agree
tell,
with
but
that.
so it's very sad because let's say they gave stuff from the 70s, from the 80s. This is why when I'm listening, for example, Solovyov or other Russian propagandists that say no, it's not a war between Russia and Ukraine, it's Russia against NATO. No, it's not against NATO, because against NATO it's you cannot compare the two armies. It's uncomparable. This is why I think that the mobilization. Also, I have a lot of friends that, let's say, flew out of the countries because they didn't want to be called. A lot in Kazakhstan, a lot in Georgia, a lot in Turkey, Armenia, whatever, all the places where Russian can go without a visa. And I agree with you. If Russia want to make more mobilization, they can. But it was so difficult to make a mobilization of 300,000. Let's say that it's not 300,000, it's 500,000. Perfect. But also, if you have this mobilization, you cannot put on ground 500,000 because you need logistics, you need weapons, you need supply chain. What is happening now on the field is that the supply chain is not working.
To maybe a little bit counter that, I understand. I agree with the supply chain argument, but think about it in this way: if you could reverse that point towards Ukraine, you would maybe notice that in case of Ukraine, you have to gather resources from the entirety of Europe and from the United States, and even from South Korea, as United States are planning to buy shells, artillery shells from South Korea. So if we're talking about supply chains, Ukrainian supply chains are way longer than Russian, and Russia builds their own stuff. Frankly,
I agree, Isla, but if it's true, let's say that it's true, why the Russians are not advancing, especially in Donbass? If you check to the
don't know.
if you check to the line, so it means that there is something that we are missing, or and the reason why the Americans are buying shells from South Korea, it's because it's one of the biggest deposit of 155 millimeter shells, and Russians or Soviets are using 152. So the main thing is that I think that after the Ukrainians will finish completely the post-Soviet arsenals that all the Eastern countries gave to them, let's say Poland, Slovakia, Czech Republic, Bulgaria, or whatever, I think that they will switch all the howitzers, artillery system, or whatever to 155 millimeters. So that this is the reason why we're collecting. And both part, I think, we are going out of ammunition. If the Russians are full of ammunition, there is no explanation why the Russians are trying to buying missiles from Iran or North Korea. If you are full of weapons, you don't have to buy abroad missiles. And
Why wouldn't you buy if you could increase your stock just in case for the future? I'm not arguing that. I don't
because
know
it's
how
the
much
second
ammunition.
producer in the world of weapons, Russia, after US. So if you are able to produce, why, and you are the second biggest producer in the world, why you are buying abroad? Because they are out of ammunition, or there is a problem in the supply chain, or
Charles?
they're not able to produce internally the drones. I don't know. It's Charles, if you
To
want
counter
to
that,
tell.
yes, sorry. To counter that, I don't necessarily think, because it's like, for instance, let's say the Shahid drones. It's not really that Russia cannot produce those drones. It's just maybe instead of them using their own drones, why can't they just continue manufacturing them while buying just in the meanwhile other drones to do the same work? And I think maybe something similar applies to arms. Like they can produce arms, but if they have the money, they can still get extra arms from elsewhere. Just I don't know. Yeah, it's just, and
There's also.
I just
Sorry.
oh I wanted
Please
to
continue.
like, to explain a point like what you said earlier on, that you think that maybe the meeting we're having with China in Indonesia, is it? I've forgotten the name of the meeting. Like I don't really think that they're going to back down. The reason I think that they're not going to back down is like how can we put it? Like the moves that the US has made, like towards China in the recent past, it doesn't really suggest that they're going to lay off. In fact, just before the meeting, was it yesterday or some days ago, there was already a report that came that they're planning on arming Taiwan as much as possible. Like there's some urgency of arming Taiwan, so I don't think they are going to lay off and stuff. And also on China's end, uh, I don't think I don't know. Oh yeah, and also the that North Korean. I mean the where like Biden said that they're going to tell China, or I don't know if they've already told China that they are planning on if North Korea, it doesn't. Okay, I don't know. Sorry. You can continue. Sorry.
More threats from the United States, as I understand, right? Something like that. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, but let me show you something about it. I wanted to show you only. Let me show you. Okay, this one fastly. Still to understand why economics are very important in the actual time. If you check this is like the prices of the gas in Europe. You can see that before the war, let me show to you, the price was about let's say an average of 90. Okay, this is like the beginning and so you see that the actual top was not after the February 24, but it was on the 20th of December in 2021. It was already 180, then went down, and then the first up. This is like the 8th of March of 2022 to 200 to 125, then went down, then return up in the top of the top, that was 338. If you look at actual price, it's about 97 euro. Okay, so what to explain to the public, the extra, let's say, the extra economical gain that the Russian Federation got from the export of gas, it's already finished. So visa, it's mainly for two reasons. One is the southern countries founded already other suppliers. I will not repeat anytime, but it's mainly from LNG, or Italy got from Algeria, Libya, Azerbaijan. Actually, we got a lot of agreement with Egypt or Israel. Germany was able to fill all their let's say storage 99% before the winter, and unfortunately for who made the calculation of the war, this winter it's pretty hot, like in Italy now, southern Italy, it's over 20 degrees. So we just started to switch on the heating systems, and so the gas consumption in southern Europe, it's much less than the last years. At the moment, Italy is selling abroad the gas; it's not importing anymore. And in the last in the last week, it's the first time from 1974 when Italy didn't imported gas from Russian Federation. Why this is important for me in the short term and mid-term scenario? Because, as I repeat every time, 40% of the Russian GDP is made by oil and gas export. From December, there will be a completely ban also of the oil export to Europe from Russian Federation. And what does it mean? It will mean that you will decrease about 28% of the total Russian GDP. This is something that can decrease drastically the perception of the war in the internal Russian Federation. If you have an economical crisis of, I don't know, -10, -15% of the GDP in 1 year, it means a lot of inflation. It's already very high in Russia. We have a high inflation also in Italy. Now it's about 12%. It was not like this from the 80s. So who is gaining in this situation? For sure, the energy companies, who had a huge amount of extra profit from February to now. For sure, the countries that are exporting LNG, for example, Qatar or Nigeria or USA. Also, the countries that are exporting in black Russian commodities. There's a lot of materials that are going to China or India and returning back to Europe. So, in short term, my prediction that I did already in February is that one scenario will be, in my opinion, that the US and China will arrive to a deal. I think that China used technically Russia to have low price commodities, plus to test the reaction of the USA in Ukraine, to see what could be the reaction of USA in a case of invasion of Taiwan. When I was in Japan, for example, I was with a lot of Taiwanese in a conference, a scientific conference, and they said to me that technically, Taiwanese people and Chinese are very different. Culturally, everything, they are not the same thing. It's technically something that happened also in Ukraine after 1991, probably before. Russian and Ukrainians were much more similar, and in 30 years of independence they became much different. After G20, and then Isla or Charles, if you want to say something, please. My opinion is that Zelensky after Kherson will be pushed a little bit to find a sort of a deal with the Russians. I think that the big deal for the Russian could be the international reconnaissance of Crimea as part of the Russian Federation. And one provocation that I wanted to give to the public and to you too also, it's a case that it's in Italy. It's two provinces that are called Trentino Alto Adige, and they were a little bit like Lugansk and Donetsk. What happened? This part was a part of Austrian-Hungarian Empire before the Second World War. After the Second World War, they became after the First World War, they became part of Italy, and it was ethnically Austrians or Ladins. So they were still speaking another language. What they did a lot of terrorism during the 60s, 70s, and whatever. Finally, they arrived to recognition of an economical and linguistical autonomy. So they are part of Italy, but all the taxes remain on site. What happened in the last 40 years in these two provinces? They became the richest provinces in Italy, and with the best lifestyle and the level of the services and whatever. So imagine if there is a deal like this. Crimea recognized as a part of Russia with the guarantee of, let's say, water connection from the northern part of Crimea.
It's too late for that.
For
For your scenario is too late for that.
Why it's too late? Another scenario, it's also that Crimea is taken by Ukrainians. It could be also.
Sooner there's going to be a nuclear war than Ukrainians are going to get. It's just not. It's not feasible.
Imagine is like this scenario. Okay,
Russia will mobilize everything it has before Ukrainians are allowed to take Crimea.
No, but this is why I think that in
any other part of Russia that is outside
in
of
a
this entirely.
Okay, but the main problem is that after 1991 and after the Memorandum of Budapest, Russian Federation completely recognized the border of the independence of Ukraine after 1991. So the main problem was that during the sign of the Memorandum of Budapest, Kazakhstan and Ukraine give back the Russian warheads to Russia with the international guarantee of US, UK, and Russia to complete respect the border of Ukraine and Kazakhstan. So imagine a scenario where this memorandum of Budapest was not signed and Ukraine is still like with nuclear weapons. Do you think that the Russian Federation was able to take Crimea or enter in Donbass? I don't think so.
I don't think this whole situation would have been different if Ukraine was a nuclear power that was capable of defending itself against
if they have nuclear warheads,
United States meddling in its own internal political processes.
But
Charles,
the main problem is I think that because if you go in USA, the main thing is that the Russian-speaking community is mainly Ukrainians. It's not Russians. If you go, for example, to Brighton Beach, that is very famous also in Bradva movie. I went there many times. It was called like Little Odessa. The only reasons where you were able to go outside the Soviet Union during, I think, the 70s and 80s was that you declared yourself Jewish and you were able to go. It's true, you can check. And you were able to go out to the Soviet Union. The biggest community went to New York. And it's interesting because this community is mainly from Odessa and it's mainly fake Jewish because they were not Jewish. They declare themselves Jewish to go out of the Soviet Union. And for US, let me check the quantity, but the number is you have about 1 million of Americans that are like with Ukrainian roots. So if you check it, it's not so much. It's 0.3% of the American population. It's not so big, but during the now the biggest community it's like Hispanico. It's not Russian or Ukrainians. So also politically, it's not very important for the Americans the votes of the Ukrainians in the US.
On your point on like the Budapest memorandum was like it wasn't only like Russia looking to have that deal. Also, it was America that also wanted to have that deal because even though, like, let's take Russia out of the equation, Ukraine having those nukes is still somewhat of a threat to Europe. Like, this is something I kind of, because like you even like, let's just hypothetically or something take Russia out of, like, just ignoring Russia. Ukraine still is like, for instance, before the war, or like it had like one of the largest armies in the continent. Am I right? Okay,
yeah.
like yeah. So like that, I'm sure it posed somewhat of a threat to like the rest of Europe. So, which is why I have a bit of a controversial opinion that this war also serves Western Europe well, because it kind of also takes out a future competitor, a future threat.
Charles,
Like
but if you think like this, like in Europe, you have you have like warheads in France, you have warheads in United Kingdom, you have warheads in in Belgium, in Netherlands, in Germany, in Italy, in Turkey. So, I don't think that it's a problem about European security. The main problem for the US was I have this book that it's very interesting to. It's called At the Highest Level. It was written by Steve Talbot. That was one of the negotiation between US and Soviet Union. The main interest of the US, especially for Baker, was like to guarantee that the Soviet Union warheads was controlled by one only country, because it was easier to deal with one instead of five. It was not like a form of security for Europe. It was more like now in the background, US and Russia were talking about nuclear security. Imagine if you have to manage with Armenia, with Kazakhstan, with Azerbaijan, or whatever. It was completely unstable to manage like the nuclear security. If you check like this, for example, you have a lot of nuclear powers in Central Asia or Asia. China warheads, India, Pakistan, Israel. Technically, it was South Africa, but they renounced to warheads. But what I wanted to say is that who was able to predict 4 months ago that Russia lost all Kherson, Kharkiv, all the northern part. There is a video of Lukashenko, very famous. I don't know if you saw like this, that said this war will last maximum 3-4 days. Probably. So it was not by me. It was Lukashenko. So.
I know.
So probably the Belarusian expectation was too big. I don't know. But the main thing is that the problem, imagine that if the war will finish tomorrow, the main problem would be who will pay for the reconstruction. So imagine to stop the time now, and you give to the Russian the part of the border previous February 24. That could be a deal for me if they want to achieve something. All the rest is to reconstruct. Donbass is completely destroyed. Bakhmut is destroyed. The northern part, Kharkiv, it's completely to reconstruct. And actually, the Ukrainian government is completely dependent by European funds. All the salaries is paid by European Union. Ukraine, it's a bankrupted state now. So it's technically it's very difficult to maintain this situation both part infinite. I don't know if you can, if you think different, but
there was this Valdai conference recently. I post about it in chat all the time.
I saw it.
Basically, so, it lasted maybe 4 hours or something around that time. But frankly, for me personally, there was one question out of the whole conference that was relevant to the situation. Most relevant is it was I don't know about the timestamps. There's different videos, but it was the question asked by this Indian gentleman with a magnificent beard who represented South Africa. I think, I don't know. Well, he asked the question about the financial system, global financial system, something along those lines, of what kind of measures or plans there are, or kind of vision was for the future of the global financial system. in Vladimir Putin's mind, and he talked quite a bit about his vision, or what he thought was the sort of financial system that he thinks the world needs, or he thinks would be created eventually. And a few points from that were it's an autonomous financial system. It wasn't translated in every video, but I remember him saying the word autonomous, independent from anybody, any one of the actors. This is what I think is this war actually about at this point. It sort of mission creeped from the initial situation where I think United States simply wanted to prevent Russia from selling natural gas to Germany, to Europe, and to Europe in general through Germany, and perhaps sell their own liquefied natural gas to Europe and take the share of that market. It transitioned.
Islam, but
it's
something temporary. It's also the GNL. Europe is not stupid. I think that when the situation will stabilize, for sure, the European countries will start to import gas and oil from Russia, but for sure not the same
initially
quantity
it was
as before.
maybe
Not
temporarily.
the same quantity
It
but
just
it's
not that anymore.
But US has not the capacity to sell all the GNL that Europe needs, and for sure not for the same prices, because LNG it's more expensive. So it's not an alternative. You can have one part of a slot with LNG where you can buy on spot, but you need pipes. And pipes are not something that you can build in 1 month. If you were able to do like Visa, you were able to sell oil and gas to China and India, but Russia is not able. They increased.
It might have been the initial goal or vision for the situation, but now it's not about that anymore. So at first it was about gas, as I was saying. Then it was about propping Ukraine against Russia, but potentially initiating a regime change in Russia. But now it's about the dollar system. It just came to that point. If you've been talking about peace negotiations, some kind of deal between United States and Russia, or United States and China, these opposing camps, let's say. But it's not. If United States, the certain processes that I, at least from my humble position, see the certain processes that started from the beginning of this war. If United States quits this conflict right now, if it doesn't somehow finds a way to establish to regime change in Russia and establish control over Russian natural resources, because of the trends that are happening right now with Saudi Arabia, with BRICS, and China and India starting to use other currencies for trade on the energy market. If United States quits and loses in Ukraine at this point, these trends will continue to the point where these countries that control a large portion, if not the majority of the energy market, will simply find a different, will simply build a different financial system to trade without the United States and dollar.
I agree, Isla, but imagine this situation. Actually, technically, US is spending in Ukraine less than 1% of the military budget that they have in the Ukraine conflict. Less than 1% of the annual military budget of the United States. And let's say that their investment it's actually paying because one conflict that without US could finish in 1 month, actually Russians are not winning. Let's say that not they are losing, they are not winning because it's technically their withdrawal on the two biggest battleground, that it's Kherson and Kharkiv, and in Donbass they are not advancing. So the main thing is, imagine that in this situation, one part it's investing a lot because Russian is investing a lot in this war, and the other side it's investing, but it's still 1% of their military budget. Because the HIMARS that they are giving to the Ukrainian, it's not with high range missiles, as we said also in the Institute of Study of War. But this is like the military part. About the BRICS, I agree with you. But as I repeated to you, China is in a huge crisis economically and social. I don't know what will be like the results of the Chinese economy this year, but all the trends are not good. So if you have to, for example, let's say in the short term, not in the long term, next year Russia have to manage their GDP, and we already said that 40% of the GDP is oil and gas export, and about 70% of this oil and gas export went to Europe. If there is a complete cut of this oil and gas, where Russia will be able to sell it? To China, that it's in an economic recession. We're not able to sell to China. To who? So if you have
India,
a
they're
huge,
also selling to India.
but India were not increasing their economical GDP to compare the European Union the consume of this oil and gas. You need to more than double the export to India and China. And India and China were importing from Russia only because they have a huge discount on prices, not because they want it. If there is with a regular market price, China and India will not buy from Russia because it's too expensive now. So
I would
what I
even
wanted
add to that. Sorry, please continue.
now, what I wanted to say that in this situation, it's let's say it's a lose-lose situation for a lot of countries to continue this conflict, because, for example, industrialized country in Europe, Germany and Italy, have commodities with high prices, so we are less competitive in selling products. Russia have no industrialized country like Germany and Italy that is buying resources, and China and India are not comparable in the amount of commodities that they can buy. I think technically the two big winners in this situation it's still China and US. But all the others are not winning because Chinese are not Europeans. Chinese are very pragmatical, they're very prepared if they will be able to access to the Russian commodity markets. They are not very kind. Check what they did when they invaded Tibet. They simply import all the population in ethnically Chinese. They made Tibet Chinese, and the same situation. It's with Uyghur. So it's
I have
tell Charles.
no, I have a bit of a alternative take. Like when you're talking about like the situation with Tibet, it's heavily
Okay.
nuanced, especially when you see how like Tibetan society was before before they came in, because it there was serfdom, like it had a lot of issues, a lot of problems, and like China going there actually has it's kind of, I would say it's similar to what happened in the Soviet Union, that like raised so many people out of that situation. But I don't know. But all I'm just saying is like just a lot of these situations, like it's just heavy nuance or something. But China China is a different situation on its own, but mostly in term, okay, I don't know, you can continue. Sorry. I'm
Now,
not
Charles,
able to.
remember, Charles, to me like your country.
Zambia.
Zambia.
Huh?
You remember?
Yeah, Zambia. Yeah.
Zambia,
I'm
Zambia.
aware of the conflict of interest, but still, I would say it heavily. Like for instance, there's that narrative that's being pushed around saying, like, no, there's the issue for debt trap, like, oh, the debt trap, Africa is in trouble, Africa is being enslaved or something. But like, let me just from my experience, like, if because I would like to disclose that currently I'm not actually in Zambia, I'm in China. So yeah, but like if I'm to go back, and I've seen like some pictures and stuff from back home, if I'm to go back, like things have changed. There've been so many like infrastructure projects, like industries which have been built, and which are actually benefiting the locals. It's not like it's like actual things, like it's not only just like they'll just build something, like let's say there's some
Growing living
agriculture,
standards.
No. But
yeah,
Charles, I asked you
yeah,
about
like
the country because it's very interesting to me. I was checking the election in Angola or whatever. It's for example, China. It's one of the best partner of Zambia economically. And it's very curious this situation because if you check about the infrastructure, it's the technique of Chinese. It's very interesting because they invest a lot to create infrastructure for Chinese export in long term. Like you may feel that infrastructure is like to, let's say, increase the GDP of the country, but what they are buying, for example, Chinese in Europe, ports, harbor, because the main deal for Chinese is to create infrastructure that are able to receive Chinese goods. If you check the project about the Silk Road investments, they want to do like one Silk Road that is going from China to Europe, passing through, for example, Sri Lanka and whatever. But they're very clever, they're very good. But there is like a good judgment about Chinese. What I'm saying is, I have friends that work in the oil sector in Russia. Let's say Bashkortostan. They were used to deal with the European partners in selling oil and gas. Now they change because they have to deal with Chinese. And trust me, that it's not the same way of dealing. I'm not saying it's better or it's worse, but it's a different way of thinking the world. It's a different way to make a deal, different prices. And I don't know if you ever visited. I went to China 5 times, and it's an incredible world, but it's completely different from us. And as I said, like let's say that the Russian core, it's completely European, it's not Asian. So I think that to change the center of the Russian Federation to east, it could be possible, but it could be very,
No,
very painful to go from west to east in the internal equilibrium of Russian Federation. Let's move
it's not
like
going to happen.
let's move the
I would
capital
say
from Moscow to Ekaterinburg, example, or to Irkutsk. But
No.
I would say it's painful in the short term, but it's beneficial for the long term. In fact, one of my criticisms for Russia, somewhat, even though it's not really entirely true, is that like they should have done this process like years ago, decades ago, like because the
Charles said
planners should
at
have.
because there was lag. I didn't get.
Oh, sorry. I was saying that like it's painful, but it's very beneficial in the long term. One
Okay.
of my criticisms of like Russia is that you can hear what I'm saying. Sorry, I'm not sure if
Yeah.
it's still
Charles,
lagging.
we have a little bit of lag, but it's understandable.
Oh, like I was saying that like one of my criticism of Russia is that they should have done or prepared for this eventuality years ago. It's not really entirely true because over the years they've been fostering relationships with many other countries, and they've assisted in other countries. I mean, assisted other countries. I can cite Central Africa Republic, which they've helped stabilize. But like they should have done this over a drive like a long time ago, like took it seriously, even yeah. But anyway, it's water under the bridge. What's done is done. So the question is Europe, how is Europe going to cope and get alternatives? Because if you remember, is it Victoria Freeland, the Canadian? I've forgotten her post. Is it Foreign Ministry? Or, okay, I'm not sure, but Freeland, is it? No, yeah, Freeland. She was giving a speech where like she envisioned creating some sort of eco sphere, like some sort of uh, like where like only quote unquote democratic and free countries trade, and they can rely on each other rather than them relying on quote unquote dictators and authoritarians, and that
The
it
golden
received a lot of
billion.
cheer. Yes, yeah, it received a lot of cheer, but I do not know how they're going to manage it.
They
Prob-
don't. They won't. It's impossible. That, if I may, even this current conflict in relation to isolationism of any kind, even this current conflict, as they're fighting each other, as they try to isolate from each other, they're at its foundation, they're actually communicating. What is happening right now is communication. There's two avenues of communication available to people: verbal and physical. Verbal communication between people, between nations, is language as an information encoded into some kind of medium, or diplomacy. Verbal communication failed between Russia and the West. The only communication available left is physical. That's what people do when they can't find a common tongue, common language. They fight. This is what's happening. But despite that, even as they're fighting, what they're actually doing is trying to form a consensus that's going to work for both parties, even if one party is supposed to be defeated and beaten into it. That's so. The point is, it's ultimately towards greater resource consolidation and towards creating something bigger than either of the parties communicating, quote unquote, in this sort of way. What I think there was one thing, Stefano, you mentioned about the percentage of U.S. military budget and spending, and the ability of the United States to increase the amount of money they could put into this problem. There's a chart somewhere on the internet I caught of United States printing money, and how that the amount of money they printed in the past 3 years is more than something like since 70s or so. There's a huge spike right where the COVID started, and it's just going without stop. The thing is, I think is important in this relation to this, is that as United States are printing money at leisure without any restraint, they're effectively reducing the savings of not only their own people, but exporting inflation to the rest of the world. They're essentially, through their centralized control of the currency, are stealing money directly from everybody who holds their property or their money in the Western financial system. Only the United. I look at this. If I'm not an economist, I look at this situation and I see it as a bank stealing everybody's money. You will, if they continue to do that, it doesn't matter how much money you lose right now. You'll lose all of your money eventually. So the only rational thing to do in this context is to pull your money out of that system. Well, not money necessarily, but pull your resources out of that system and build something new, because that system is on the path to collapse on its own eventually. It's unsustainable.
So yeah, like maybe about the economical part, we will make another stream about it. But for Charles, I will give you like something that is pretty new. It's like this document. I can share with you after. It's about the security of gas supply in Europe. It's made by ING, that is like one of the biggest European bank based in Netherlands. You can see that the prompt natural gas prices are collapsing, as I show you in advance. And you can see in this graph that the EU gas storage, like it's mainly full. Now it's over 90%. Look at the last chapter. A significant increase in liquefied natural gas (LNG) flows and demand destruction has ensured that the European Union has built inventories at a good price this year, and they are exceeding the target of the storage. Why I'm trying to be more practical and less theoretical. But the economy about the petrodollar and whatever, we can talk also on another stream. It was like to try to close in the next 10 minutes, because it's already 1 hour and a half. To make like an arrival point. So let's check after. You can see that the latest data shows that the year-to-date pipeline flows, let's say, from Russia to Europe have fallen by around 50% year to year. So they are declined, and for example, the flow to Italy in the last week, it's going to zero, not because the Russians are cutting the gas, but because we are not buying. Uh, what uh, what is the most interesting thing? It's the last chapter here, that the most difficult year and the most difficult winter will be the next one, not this one. Because Germany is still importing from other pipelines, still a little bit from Russia. So you can check the last chapter. I will read this one and I will remember with a graph, and then we will try to close. The pace of inventory built during the 2023 injection season will be much more modest compared to what we have seen this year, given the reduction in Russian supply. The ability of the European Union to turn completely to other sources, it's just not possible. So this is why it's interesting, because the actual storage in Europe, it's still made with a part of Russian gas. Now it's less than 10%, before it was 40%, but it's still one part of the mix of the imports. Why for me, like what you said, to move to east, it's not possible in the short term. Why? Because it's much easier to do this. Let's relook a little bit to the gas infrastructure of Russia. The gas infrastructure and the oil export of Russia, it's very, very easy to west, but it's very, very difficult to east, because all the pipelines were created from the Soviet Union to export from east to west, not the opposite. Why? Because the rich market, it's still the Western market. You can sell to India and China, but 30, 40 euro less for barrel. So it's less profit. So you can theoretically, let's say, make a full mobilization, don't sell resources to the West or whatever, but you are not able to manage the budget of the state. So this is why, in my opinion, making a deal covered with a partial win, let's say Crimea, let's say autonomy of Donbass, it could be a good short-term agreement to maintain the face internally, also for Putin, because for sure Putin have to sell something to the Russian public, and also for the West. Why? Because the West for sure will not be able to make the agreement. Could be also a written guarantee that Ukraine will not be a part of NATO, but it's not bad from the Russian point of view. But on the ground, I think it will be completely difficult to achieve the original deal of reconstruct the channel between Donbass and Odessa. At the moment, it's very difficult. If you want, like, both to make a conclusion, to stay in the time, and then we will see in the next streams. Charles, Islam, if you want to say something, it's up to you.
On the issue of having a peace deal, I do not see it happening anytime soon. The die is cast, and both sides have dug deep in their trenches, even though they are both having massive losses. They are not going to have a peace deal. And also, quickly, I would like to add before I hand over, is that like there's also the situation of, if a peace deal is reached, what's going to happen to like some of these right-wing militias that are all over Ukraine?
Repeat, Charles. What happened to? I didn't get.
Oh, sorry. If a peace deal is reached, what's going to be the fate of these right-wing militias in Ukraine? Like,
But
they
you
going
are
to
telling about like Azov Battalion, Pravi Sector, these groups.
yes, like are they going to hand over their arms voluntary and all those or not?
Charles,
That's the
I
question.
think in that case, the West have a big advantage in respect of Russian Federation because I repeat to you, the Ukrainian state it's completely bankrupt now. So without the Western money, tomorrow, like Ukraine, it's fallen. So I think that if there is any little shadow of a peace treaty that could be achieved between the two parts, if Zelensky will say no, simply the US will not give any weapons from the day after, and the war is finished. So this is why I'm saying that the pressure that Ukraine could have from the West, it's very big if there is any need to make a peace treaty. But and Isla can confirm or not. Uh, the main point is to sell to the internal market in Russia that a peace treaty it's a victory for Russian Federation. This is very difficult because the Russians are very proud, very nationalistic. They cannot see one lost in Ukraine. Isla, can you confirm it or not?
I think there's one move that still needs to be seen how it's going to unfold. It's this mobilization and the additional troops that will be arriving in Ukraine. Some of them are already there, but that's one thing. I think if I may conclude everything that I've said prior to this, I don't think there's going to be a peace agreement, not because necessarily of anything that's happening directly on Ukrainian or Russian or however you want to call the territory of the conflict, but because the situation overall globally has escalated to the point where it's not about necessarily a war on the ground between Russia and Ukraine. It's about the economic war between the Western financial system and everybody else. And as I said already, that the Western financial system is a bank that's stealing everybody's money. And at this point, no matter the losses, essentially, there's going to have to be at some point a withdrawal from that bank and the creation of an alternative. It didn't have to happen at the beginning of this conflict. It didn't have to happen first couple months into this conflict. It could have still been avoided. The West and Russia, the United States and Russia could have come to some kind of agreement, could have stopped this conflict, could have stopped, as you said, could have agreed on Ukrainian neutrality and so on. At this point, it's too late. The Russians, before the mobilization, it could have been done. After the mobilization, after the recognition of those four regions as part of Russia, it's too late. The sequence of events has gone past the point where it could have been reversed. And at some point, in any case, an alternative to the Western financial system would have had to have been built. Now it's the only opportunity that the rest of the world will have.
I agree with you, but remember that when you make a war, that it's economical or also on the ground, there is an option that you can also not win. So the main thing is that both parts can win or lose. in this case, also if both parts have mobilization or weapons or whatever, it's difficult to predict what will happen in the next year. But it's easy to predict what will be economically in Russian Federation if there is a complete cut of the export of commodities. This is what I want to say. If the level of life of the average Russian people will be degraded, I don't know if it will be easy to maintain the stability inside the federation.
That's why
it's something that could happen. So
that's why I think there's a time limit to this scenario as well. I think the end of this war has to happen before the end of 2023. So it will be within the next year. And as for I don't want to say scapegoat, I think there's going to be a transition of power in Russia. If magically Vladimir Putin doesn't die as everybody wishes him to, well, not everybody, but a lot of people in the West wish him to die. I hope it doesn't
I don't
happen.
know, because a lot of people in the West
One second.
don't know what will happen.
There's an election in 2024, and I don't think he will run for the next presidential term. I think there will be a successor that is a representative of this current political establishment Russian, but unrelated directly to the, well, not unrelated, but sort of a new face. And you can let the Putin's era become history in that context, with all the complexities that entails.
But
that's what
I agree with you. I was talking, just to give the last sentence and close. I was talking with a Belarusian analyst that is military summary, and I was asking to him in his point of view, like what could be the reason, like let's say that there is a big mistake that a lot of people is giving, like that this war, it's like the Putin's war. For me, it's a mistake. It's also said by an Italian analyst that it's called Fabri. And for me, like, it's a Russian war, and also Putin, it's a product of Russia. It's not coming from another planet. So what he said to me, it's like that this war probably was made also to give an heritage of Putin in history. However it will end, Putin will be remembered for this war, not for what he did before. And by his point of view, by Putin's point of view, not from the others. And for sure, economically, like the Putin era, if you check about the data and GDP, was pretty good for the Russians, because it increased a lot the level of quality of the life from the 90s to now. But I repeat, what will happen if this level of quality of life that was increasing for 20 years, it will start to decrease? It's something that didn't happen in the last 20 years in Russia. So this is why it's difficult to predict what will happen in the next years. So let's see. We're already 1 hour 40 minutes. So thank you all to be a participant of this stream. Thanks Charles from Zambia. Thanks Islam from Russia. And I hope that you enjoyed this time. We will start in the next 2 weeks with a lot of speech. So be ready. Every day I already planned a lot of video, a lot of Mazarin pills with a lot of interested video for the subscribers. So if you have any questions, just put in the comments. Also for Charles and for Is Not 42. So Okay, I read your message, so I will check later. So if anybody have curiosity to tell to the speakers or to the subscribers, just put in the comments, and please participate as a speaker in the next open tables. So thank you all, and see you in the next open mic. Ciao.
Thanks. Bye-bye.
Good evening. Ciao, 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 ciao.